You're standing in line, your phone is in your pocket, 10 seconds pass. Your hand is already moving toward it. You don't decide to reach for it, you just do. Something ancient is happening in that moment. Something older than smartphones, older than cues, older than boredom itself as you understand it. Scientists have spent decades trying to explain why an empty moment feels almost unbearable to you. And the real answer is far stranger than you have a short attention span. Boredom isn't a flaw in your brain, it's a signal, and it might be one of the most important signals you have. Think about the last time you felt truly bored, not tired, not relaxed, bored. That specific, itchy, restless discomfort of having nothing to do and nowhere for your attention to land. Your brain hated it. It wanted out. But why? In 2014, psychologist Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia ran an experiment that sounds almost too strange to be real. He put people alone in a room with nothing to do for 15 minutes, no phone, no book, just their thoughts. The only other option available to them was a button that delivered a mild electric shock. Many of the participants pressed the button on purpose. Some pressed it more than once. One man shocked himself nearly 190 times in 15 minutes just to have something happen other than sitting with his own mind. Read that again. People chose pain over stillness. That's not weakness. That's design. Your brain is built to seek stimulation the way your lungs are built to seek air. And for most of human history, that design kept you alive. Picture your ancestors 60,000 years ago sitting at the edge of a fire-lit camp. Stillness for them wasn't peaceful. Stillness meant a predator hadn't moved. Stillness meant nothing new had been discovered today. No food found, no threat identified, no opportunity noticed. A restless brain, one that couldn't sit still in silence, was a brain that kept scanning, kept exploring, kept surviving. Boredom, in other words, may have evolved as a push away from stagnation and toward action, not punishment, propulsion. John Eastwood, a psychologist at York University who has spent much of his career studying boredom specifically, defines it in a way that reframes everything. He describes boredom as the uncomfortable feeling of wanting to be engaged in a satisfying activity, but being unable to do so. Notice what that definition doesn't say. It doesn't say boredom is having nothing to do. It says boredom is having nothing that engages you. That distinction changes everything about what's happening when you reach for your phone in line. You're not bored because your hands are empty. You're bored because your mind is unengaged. And unengaged for a creature built to constantly scan its environment for relevance feels dangerous, even when you're standing in a perfectly safe grocery store line. So your hand moves to your pocket, not because you're weak-willed, because a 200,000-year-old alarm system just went off, and your phone is the fastest way to make it stop. Here's where it gets stranger. Sandy Mann, a psychologist at the University of Central Lancashire, ran a series of studies asking a question almost nobody had bothered to ask seriously. What if boredom isn't just uncomfortable? What if it's useful? In one of her studies, participants who were first given a boring task, like copying numbers out of a phone directory, went on to perform better on a creative brainstorming task afterward than participants who hadn't been bored first. The boring task didn't drain their creativity, it seemed to prime it. Why would that happen? When your mind isn't occupied by an external task, it doesn't go quiet, it goes wandering. Neuroscientists call this the default mode network, a set of brain regions that activates specifically when you're not focused on anything in particular. It's the same network active when you're daydreaming, remembering, imagining, or piecing together ideas that don't seem related to each other at first. Boredom, it turns out, is often the doorway into that network, and that network is where a surprising amount of your best thinking happens. Some of history's biggest breakthroughs seem to have arrived not during intense focus, but during unfocused stillness, long walks, long train rides, long stretches of nothing, the moments your ancestors would have spent staring at a horizon, waiting for something to happen. Your modern life has almost completely engineered that stillness away. Every gap that used to be filled with idle thought, waiting for a bus, standing in an elevator, lying awake before sleep, is now filled instantly with a feed, a video, a notification. The moment boredom starts to rise, you can extinguish it in under a second, and you almost always do. But if boredom is a push toward something and you interrupt that push every single time it appears, what happens to the momentum it was supposed to build? Some researchers now suspect that constant micro distraction may be quietly starving your capacity for deep, wandering thought. Not because your brain has changed, but because it's never given the discomfort long enough to do its job. The itch shows up. The itch gets scratched instantly. The push towards something new never gets the chance to become an idea, a decision, or a spark of creativity because it's silenced before it can finish forming. There's a version of you that used to sit with that discomfort longer. Waiting rooms without screens, long car rides without podcasts, even further back, evenings around a fire with nothing to look at but flame and each other. Boredom used to have room to breathe. And in that room, your ancestors may have found some of their best ideas, their most important reflections, even the earliest sparks of storytelling and art. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. When was the last time you let a boring moment run its full course without reaching for anything to end it? Can you even remember? That doesn't mean boredom feels good. It rarely does. It's supposed to feel a little uncomfortable, the same way hunger is supposed to feel uncomfortable. Discomfort is often the mechanism that moves you forward. Eastwood's research suggests that people who chronically struggle to tolerate boredom are more likely to report higher stress, more impulsive decisions, and in some cases, a greater risk of unhealthy coping behaviors, because they've never learned to sit inside that discomfort long enough to let it resolve naturally. The people who tolerate it, on the other hand, tend to report something different, more reflection, more creative problem solving, a stronger sense of what actually matters to them, because boredom, left alone, has a strange habit of surfacing exactly the thoughts you've been avoiding. Maybe that's the real reason it's so uncomfortable, not because your mind is empty, because when nothing else is competing for your attention, it finally gets quiet enough to hear what you'd been drowning out. So the next time you're standing in that line and your hand starts moving toward your pocket, try pausing for just a few seconds longer than feels comfortable. Not because boredom feels good, it won't, but because that discomfort might be the oldest, most reliable signal you have, quietly nudging you toward whatever comes next. Your ancestors didn't fear silence because they were bored. They listened to it because it was often the only warning or the only invitation they were ever going to get. You're standing in line. Your phone is in your pocket. This time, your hand stays still.